We're going live now.
Awesome. So we thought that we would have a lot of people joining our webinar today on how to double your income in 12 months. But only one person signed up. So we're going to have more of a dialogue. We're going to have more of a dialogue, a Q&A session with James. So James just bought a house in the southwest, or the southeast, I should say, the southeast of the US. I think that region is called the Rust Belt or something like that, right? Tennessee is part of the Rust Belt, home of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, home of Elvis Presley, the king. I was in the military, so I used to go to Tennessee all the time when I was in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. The bad thing about military people, all the military bases are 90% male, 10% female. So if you are in the military, you travel far and you travel in uniform so that all the girls can say, "Oh, I love men in uniform." You know how it goes. So I used to go to Tennessee. Oh, when I was a kid, I tell you, stupid. Man, so we have James that owns a property out in Tennessee, and it's a brand new property, doesn't have a tenant currently, and we're trying to figure out how to double James' income in 12 months. First thing first, in order for you to double your income, like I'm not going to disclose personal information. I'm just going to give hypotheticals, examples. This webinar was geared toward people that are making between, I don't know, 50 grand, 100 grand, so about $5,000, $10,000 a month kind of people. But if you make a little bit higher than that, that's cool too. The way that I did it was in 12 months, what I did first was plan out the entire 12 months. And in my planning out of the 12 months, I created milestone every 3 months, and I try to measure everything towards that milestone on a monthly basis. Now, suppose that I wanted to double my $20,000 income in 12 months. I had to figure out, for instance, the market rent in my neighborhood, in my target area. So I am in Massachusetts. The average 2-bedroom apartment in Massachusetts is between $2,500 to $4,500, depending on where you are. But the average acquisition of a 2-bedroom on the low end is about $350,000 to $400,000. On the high end is about 600 grand. So it's in that range. Except if we go to downtown, then you're talking about mil plus. So how do I then generate $20,000 to double my income in 12 months? Well, hey, Charles joined the meeting. Cool. So how do I figure out how then do I double the 20 grand in a span of 12 months? Well, if I'm looking at a $2,500 property, I probably need something like almost 10 properties. To do that and figuring out, can I buy 10 properties in 12 months? Probably not. It's probably also going to require a lot of capital. So then I have to figure out alternatives. Can I find a way to control 10 properties without owning 10 properties? That's probably more of a feasible thing. Now, it's still real estate, but in this case, it's a little bit different. I think that in my scenario, what I would probably do is check out the occupancy rate and the income on that property has an Airbnb versus a straight out rental income. So for instance, if you're familiar with the Massachusetts market, I bought a property in a neighborhood called Dorchester, which is in Boston, southern part of Boston. It's the least expensive project, least expensive neighborhood. And I bought a apartment that had 3-bedroom in my case. And I looked at the rental income. The rental income on that project was going to be $2,500 to $3,000. And then I went and checked on Airbnb. I could rent Airbnb probably about $300 to $400 a night on that particular property. And if I had a 60% occupancy, that gets me closer to the $5,000 or $6,000. I have a calculator so that I give you more accurate numbers. Calculator. So if I have about $400 times 60% occupancy rate, that is 20 nights. We're now up to $8,000 versus $3,000. But there are costs associated with running an Airbnb, and there are municipalities that restrict Airbnb, but also there's costs. Now, in my scenario, we set up a minimum of 2 nights, maximum of 5 nights, because I don't want to build tenancy and I want to have a little bit of the calendar open. And we block certain days, and there are Airbnb YouTubers that explains all this strategy in more detail. So that in the middle of the week, we try to reduce the price. On the weekends and things like that, we try to increase the price a little bit to avoid partiers, because we rather have the apartment empty on the weekend than have partier in the apartment on the weekend. Because our market tends to be a market where people flocks to during the week because of the quantity of schools that are in the market that we're in, or hospitals. People come here for hospital surgery and things like that, and they bring their whole family together for moral support, and then on the weekend they go back. So it ended up working out a little bit better. In the 3-bedroom that we made, we generated, instead of a $3,000 rental income, a little bit of closer to the $5,000 rental income net after we paid out the cleaners and things like that. And we negotiate with the cleaners that we would pay them a flat fee per hour to go and clean the apartments and things of that nature. Now, that still does not get me double the income in 12 months. So the other thing we did is we understood that we needed to increase the things that are going to generate income for us. In this case, a property. So if we didn't have a lot of money to put down on buying more property, we just went and negotiated with property owners that had a property and it was already empty. And we did a rental split with a base. So in 2-bedroom apartment neighborhoods, we offered $2,000 to the landlord. We explained exactly what we were doing. We offered $2,000 and 50% of the profit. So if we made $5,000 profit, we would pay them the $2,000. We would have $3,000 left. We would split the profit with the $3,000 with the landlord, and we would keep $1,500. We give them $1,500. And if we had 3 of those, we made another $5,000. That got us to $10,000 on 4 properties, with the 3 properties not being properties that we own, and 1 of them being properties that we own. And when we had economy of scale, we could negotiate with the cleaner for a reduction to increase our net a little bit. Now, that's also tricky. The other thing that we did was we asked, now that we had cleaners, maintenance people to take care of our Airbnb, we had 4 properties on the thing. We looked into software to manage the revenue and income and things of that nature. We figured out, is it possible to, well, this one may not apply to people in Tennessee, because I think in Tennessee, you need a real estate license to be a property manager. In my case, I had a real estate broker's license already, so we reached out to people and see if we could manage their property for a fee. So that did not apply to us, but we did add some properties that we managed for customers, and also went into Airbnb and asked other people for a fee if we could manage their property. Now, all of that added to our income. Now, in my situation, I was fortunate that I had a little bit of savings. So it allowed me in a 6 months period to buy one more apartment to do Airbnb. So within 12 months, I had 2 properties that I was doing Airbnb. I had 3 properties that I was renting out to do Airbnb, and then I had 2 properties that I was managing Airbnb for other people. Now, when I say all of these things, I did the real estate part of thing, and my wife did the Airbnb management side of things. So we own the domain name massshorttermrental.com because my wife was doing a Massachusetts-based short-term rental, and we did that before the pandemic. Now, when the pandemic happened, we shut down business and we just rented our property because even though we were making over $20,000 with our Airbnb business before the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, we were stuck with a bunch of properties that we could not do Airbnb. So we had to let our lease lapse with the landlord and then rent our regular apartments to regular tenants and then stop Airbnb. But we still rented it with fully furnished apartment. Now, suppose that you don't want to get into that kind of scenario. We also did a project where we did somewhat of a, somewhat of a crowdfunding, but with limited friends that we knew. So it didn't trigger the Securities and Exchange Commission rules because we knew the people, we had relationship, and it was a partnership of 3 or 4 people. So we had 2 older gentlemen that were facing retirement, that had a lot of money, big IRA kind of scenario, and they were facing retirement. Now, putting in the bank account was a loss for them. The money in the bank account was a loss for them. So we partnered up with these people and they provided down payments that we needed so that we go into a joint venture, an LLC, where their names are on the LLC, our name is on the LLC. And we negotiated an agreement that was favorable to both parties. For instance, I was interested in the equity. They were interested in the cash flow because they were facing retirement and that cash flow was going to go away. I am young, so I'm not really interested in the cash flow, even though it's not bad if I have it, but that was not my priority because I still have an active full life income kind of thing. And I'm not looking at retirement for 20 years, but I was interested in building wealth. So the way we negotiated it is they'll get most of the cash flow. I'll get all of the equity with a little bit of cash flow to help me manage the property. And that structure allowed us to create a joint venture with an LLC where we bought 2 properties and held it together. Now, we just sold 1 property. We bought it for 300 grand, sold it for 500 grand. I got the equity, they got the cash flow. So we didn't have to hold the equity until the end, but I ended up getting the better portion of the share because I understood that the equity a lot of time grows faster on a leveraged amount versus the cash flow that comes in on a frequent amount. So that's where we negotiate. However, to increase your income, you can do the opposite. Since this is about doubling your income, you could do the opposite where you're on the other side of the transaction with someone that is interested in the depreciation, that is interested in the tax benefits of the thing, because they probably make a lot of money. So they will be interested in writing off something on their taxes in exchange for letting you keep the cash flow. And then they would get the equity on the back end, and you don't have to put any of your money in the transaction. You can just use someone else's capital to do in the transaction. However, you can only do that if you already have a relationship with the individual, because if you don't have a relationship with the individual and you start advertising that you are looking for partners, you might be triggering a violation of the Securities and Exchange Commission on syndications. So you have to be careful about that. But you could do that. And in our case, when we sold the property, we captured the equity, they captured the cash flow, and then we parted ways on that framework. We're looking at other opportunities that we're doing in the future together. But right now, my priority is to create a bigger syndication where more people can join to do those kinds of projects where they're getting something that they're interested in, we're getting something that we're interested in, to do a real estate project together. So that's another way that you can structure it so that you add assets to your portfolio, not necessarily leaving your job to manage those things, but add assets to your portfolio with little or no income coming out of your pocket, particularly if your saving is non-existent. Let me see, how else can you? I am teaching based on this experience. That's a good question. So we do have a webinar that we're doing every week to try to build a little bit of our credibilities, to build a little bit of our audience, to build content on YouTube, because I've been teaching for 15 years and never went on YouTube. So now that I'm doing ads for the public, they're telling me, you need a YouTube. So I'm trying to create content for the YouTube with the help of you guys, James and Charles. So exactly. So you saw this on YouTube. So now that's there, but obviously we are creating a YouTube channel to fill the content as fast as we can with these webinars. And then, exactly, we don't have any content yet. So we're hoping to do all of these webinars, Q&A sessions, interaction and dialogue, so that we can create a lot of content, awesome content that we're going to put on YouTube. Now, we hope to also have courses for investors. We've been teaching real estate for 15 years, but our main audience were always real estate agents and brokers. So we are a licensed school in Massachusetts that teach real estate agents and brokers how to obtain their real estate license. So this is the place where we teach you about all of the riparian rights, the littoral rights, and the deeds and the trust and all of these things, and you go pass your real estate exam. But we're trying to now target investors, and we try to target syndicators and people that are interested in making passive income, meaning that we pool money together, we do a real estate project, and then we give you your return with your profit at the end of the year or at the end of a couple of years or whatever. But that's our new avenue, because we've been restricted to doing education during the pandemic. And in order for us to get that audience, we're trying to do some YouTube content for that purpose. Now, apart from that, the content, or not the content, but the courses that we're going to put together, particularly for investors, we're going to offer that for a 6-month period, where we're going to meet once a week and teach you guys content for once a week. And then after that, we'll have Slack webinars, newsletter, articles, homework, and then we'll help you with your particular deals when you're ready to have deals. We'll also open up our deals to you guys if you guys are interested. And we'll do that for a period of 6 months. And after the 6 months, we'll mail you a certificate. And we're going to charge about $1,000 for that. The regular price that we're charging is like $2,500, but we're going to do a promotion at the beginning to charge like $1,000 or something like that, so that we get a lot of people that are interested, so we can build a community of these people. But those are the two things that we're doing, and that's the reason why we're doing YouTube. Otherwise, before this age, we didn't have to do any ad. We were just happy, fat, lazy. So everybody that wanted to learn real estate, they would do Boston Real Estate School. We would come up and we'll have students. But since we were restricted to doing that because of the pandemic, we thought of doing something else. So are you and your wife going to continue doing the Airbnb? No. No, we're not. We've decided to stop doing Airbnb. It was very beneficial. It was very, very profitable. But we decided to stop doing Airbnb. I have a 1-year-old. I have a pandemic baby. So my wife is going to worry about the baby. I'm going to do real estate, and we're going to let someone else do Airbnb, but we're not going to do Airbnb. We're going to just rent it out. So we bought a $300,000 property. We bought a couple of them, $300,000 properties. During the pandemic, before the pandemic, we were making over 100 grand. So a couple of those properties are almost paid off. So now, if we do Airbnb, if we rent it out outright, we still collect the positive cash flow on a low debt service coverage ratio. We're still okay. So we're not going to do, oh, thanks. We're not going to do, we're not going to do Airbnb anymore. We're just going to rent it out, and maybe when the kid is in kindergarten or whatever, we might think about going back. But at the moment, we're going to do the education, we're going to do real estate projects, and then we're going to do Airbnb. Airbnb is a lot of work. So if you don't have the right team, because what we learned during the series of doing Airbnb is that there were serial ADHD type people that even if they walked into an incredibly clean house and they saw one string of hair on the sink because the cleaner wiped it and re-wiped it and something was left behind, they will stay in the Airbnb and then either write a bad review or complain to you in hopes that you give them a discount or that you waive their fee. Whereas my logic is that if you are not satisfied with the Airbnb from walking in, you should have at that moment stopped, say, hey, I'm not happy, ask for a refund, and then bounce. But if you stay in the Airbnb after that complaint, it just doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of, it was a lot of work. It was stressful. So Airbnb, you need to have really the right team. And it only starts making financial sense if you have the scale to be able to delegate and outsource a lot of things so that all of the stress doesn't fall on you because, well, you're operating a hotel. And if you don't have the right number of rooms or the right number of units or the right number of apartments, you're not making a lot of money and you're doing a lot of work. Whereas if you have the scale, then you do very little work and you get a great deal. So Airbnb is really a business where someone is just renting out a room in their home, or someone is doing it as a business and has a lot of units. But most people that are in the middle tend to suffer more. That's my opinion. So that's the reason why we thought of not doing Airbnb anymore. I don't know if I gave you good content about doubling your income using real estate. Yeah. Yeah, tenants is also another. Tenants is also another major issue. We with the help of technology, you can automate a lot of the things. So a lot of the properties we have, we try to get the tenants to pay rent automatically on the phone or have automatic deduction or sign up for one of these auto systems. And then we try to have warranty companies be automatically linked to the tenant so the tenant doesn't call us if the toilet is clogged kind of scenario. And then we try to do inspection on the property once a year, especially if it's a frequently rotating unit. But the cool thing that I like about real estate, even if I get a bad tenant, or even if the tenant is paying late, even if all of those things becomes a tax write-off. So all of the income that I make in other areas of my life, because I'm also a real estate guy, that profit that's over there is balanced out by the loss that I may incur from time to time doing real estate, where other businesses is not like that. A lot of other businesses seem to be a little bit different. So I get a chance to write off my car, the mileage, the gas, the insurance, my portion of my apartment or house. I mean, if I have an apartment in DC and I have a house in Massachusetts. So when I go check on my properties in DC, my property there is written off, my trip is written off, and I take advantage and see families and friends when I am in DC. And when I'm in Massachusetts, the same thing. A portion of my house in Massachusetts is dedicated to my business. So therefore, that percentage gets a tax write-off. And then on the flip side, you have the depreciation of the real estate and the capital expenditure and the loss of rent, attorney fees, CPA, and all the other stuff. You get to write all of those things up. So if you're not getting the things that you need from that real estate transaction activity or business, and you have a full-time job, those things can balance out so that your burden on the tax gets reduced by these things, while these things indirectly is growing in equity under normal circumstance. and then you're also writing off depreciation. So you can essentially have $100,000 or $200,000 house that you own that doesn't collect any rent, but it still benefits you indirectly because interest, tax, and insurance are write-offs and things of that nature. So there's a lot of benefits in real estate as far as that's concerned. So that's the reason why I like real estate. It's cool. I mean, I can't own stocks and get all of those benefits than if I own the real estate. And the other thing that real estate does is it forces me indirectly to save, because if it grows in equity and I'm making monthly payment to it, I'm saving. If it grows in equity and a tenant is making a payment to it, it grows. And I am therefore saving. I'm therefore saving a lot of money. What do you guys think? I've spoken a lot. We're 30 minutes into this thing. Any thoughts, questions, comments, suggestions? Yes. While you're typing your question, I have a question. What do you guys think of the syndication that I'm trying to put together? What do you guys think of the real estate training that I'm trying to? Do you think the real estate training is like too expensive? Is it not expensive enough? Do you think a lot of people might sign up for something like this? Let me know. What's your question, James? Yes. A lot of syndication, what they do is they go after what's called an accredited investor. And usually you have to be in that list of accredited investors. And I think there's only about 8% of the US population that's an accredited investor. Therefore, a lot of people don't hear about what I'm trying to do. So, yes, it is. So that's probably the reason why you haven't heard from it. So syndication targets a lot of wealthy neighborhoods, wealthy area to capture those people. But to be involved in a regular syndication, you have to make $200,000 a year as a single person or $300,000 a year as a married couple, or you have to have an asset outside of your house worth $1 million or more to be considered an accredited investor. In the 2008 Job Act created the CF version, the crowdfunding version, where you can invest a maximum of $5,000 a year if you're not an accredited investor. Yeah. Yes, thank you, James. So, all right, James. Nice meeting you. Nice meeting you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, CJ, I think that you should take a record. You should keep a record of all of the expenses that you pay to rehab your house in California, and make sure that you provide that information to someone that has expertise in preparing taxes for real estate investors, because that is definitely something you can write off. And then hopefully you can get your money back by doing home equity line of credit so that the tenant pays for that. All right. All right. So we've been on the call for 30 minutes. Thank you so much for joining. And I'll see you guys later. Awesome. See you guys later. Thank you.